Yeah, I agree with what Kurt has to say, and to me, this is one of a myriad of examples of this new world that we're all living in, which is, in my view, largely defined by the fact that technology has outpaced policy, has outpaced law, and has outpaced legislation. So what you have are the capabilities to do things you never could do before. And as a result, you're having to deal with questions and unintended consequences for which there are no frameworks. It doesn't mean that we want that we're adversaries. It means that we haven't figured out how best to deal with these yet.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of ground to cover, and we do want to open this up to questions. Of course, one of the words on everybody's mind is WikiLeaks, so I wanted to bring that up too. Quickly, we want to talk about the embed situation. I know that people like you, Elisabeth, have gone out there, but I do know that military reporters and editors has circulated a sort of a protest letter in which they said that last month, while in Kandahar, several journalists complained of being ousted from their planned embeds. At the media center in Kandahar airfield, a dozen photographers and reporters complained about suddenly finding themselves booted from places like the forward operating base Wilson for unclear reasons, or because they'd gotten into trouble for going directly to the unit's public affairs personnel rather than the main public affairs group. And this was journalists from the AP, NPR, the New York Times, and McClatchy all complaining. So I wanted to touch on that too. We also wanted to quickly get into Guantanamo. Especially I've been down there several times, and I remember that one of the things that was really hard was to get any kind of transcripts or documentation of what was happening, and I know that that's still a problem. I just talked to somebody last night who's down there right now covering the Cotter case, and they said that they still can't get transcripts, and that it's a pretty tough slog down there getting what they feel that the public deserves in terms of documentation of what's happening down there. So that's another issue, and I mean, I think we can sort of, if you want, why don't we start with the embeds thing first, if we can? I mean, is there any kind of restrictions going on, or is it because of operational, restrictions down there in terms of like not being able to go to places because of the combat situation? Or
I'm probably not the right person to ask in terms of being able to answer that, completely. Right. My colleague Greg Smith, Admiral Greg Smith, who heads communications for ISAF, I think is doing a magnificent job, as are all of the public affairs officers who are operating under a difficult situation. So I don't know. Right. I do know that requests for embeds in Kandahar there's waiting lists. They have enormous numbers of requests. Right. They're trying to fill them as much as possible. And again, I would have to defer that to my colleague Greg Smith. He'll know the details. I'd feel awkward speaking for him.
Sure. You guys want to talk about the embed situation?
Well, I can talk to what I experienced in Iraq, and that is units are limited in the amount of media that they can bring in, and it's not, you can't apply a universal template. Different units have different capabilities. It's just the way of the world, and sometimes there are situations beyond the control, such as weather, that prevent transportation of media personnel and journalists into those formations and things. So what I'm saying is that there are probably very good reasons for why this has happened. Not having been there, I'm not a part of that chain of command, so I can't talk to what's going on in Afghanistan. I will tell you that I tried as a PAO to facilitate as many embeds as I possibly could, and I always tried to work with the journalists to the best of my ability. Most of the time we could do that, and I was very fortunate that my higher headquarters gave me the leeway to work directly with journalists to try to solve the problems and not so much the problems, but the challenges in terms of getting them into our formations. But not every headquarters has the same policies and the way to do business, and so without knowing how they do it, I mean, I can't speak specifically to that, other than to say that I think that most public affairs professionals want to get these journalists into their formations.
Right.
But there are going to be challenges and factors that are out of their hands, and you just have to work through it.
Yeah, I don't know specifically what happened down there. I know there were a lot of complaints. It all happened around the same time that everybody converged in Kandahar airfield, and then there were 6 embeds canceled all around the same time. And if you get all the way down there and your embed is canceled, it's a serious drag. But I also know, of course, that we had a New York Times reporter and New York Times photographer, the aforementioned Joao Silva, on an embed last weekend when the photographer was hit by an IED. So whatever caused that rash of cancellations, there seemed to have been at least some more going on.
Right.
But and again, I don't know what was going on down there.
Right.
Speak to it.
Let's get to WikiLeaks for a second. I mean, everybody knows the backstory, but briefly, this summer they released about 70,000 documents, I think it was, about confidential dispatches from U.S. troops in Afghanistan. And then just in recent days, they distributed nearly 400,000 classified documents from the Iraq War. And there's been a flurry of responses in Washington from both sides of the political aisle. And I think that there are some people interpreting Jeff Morell's statement about this as a suggestion that maybe the federal government is considering having WikiLeaks be the first public target for a U.S. government cyber attack. And by that meaning using whatever means necessary to shut them down, that if you can't stop them in court, we might have to basically use other ways of taking out their ability to do this. I think his remarks, and I could read them to you. I don't get that reading from them, but I think other people have publicly written that. So is that something that's being contemplated, or what do you do with an organization like WikiLeaks, especially when you have an Obama administration that is saying we want public transparency? I mean, this seems to go pretty much farther across the line than just mere transparency, but just wanted to ask you your thoughts on that.
Let me just first give a shout out to my friend and colleague Jeff Morell, who's taking a beating here, and to say that I think he does a great job as spokesman. He is having to deal with the same kinds of issues that we all are, and I don't think he has stated, nor is it our intent to state whatsoever, that we're out to bomb WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks.
No, a
cyber attack. Okay. WikiLeaks is another one of these. In my view, it is the template of the inability of policy and law to keep up with technology.
Right.
You now have the ability to send anything, anywhere, to anyone at any time. In doing so, I think WikiLeaks has given whistleblowers a bad name because there are absolutely justifiable reasons for whistleblowers to want to make available information that they honestly and truly believe the public needs to know if they have been misled. I think here this is a different case.
Right.
I'm not sure what the journalistic credentials are of WikiLeaks.
Right.
You have hundreds of thousands of documents that have been released illegally. They are in the possession of WikiLeaks illegally.
Right.
They contain information that could put the lives of men and women in uniform at great danger. That point was made very strongly in the first batch that was released.
Right.
The founder of WikiLeaks had said that they had made an attempt to do redaction, but they didn't have the expertise to do it. And in fact, they'd only apparently addressed 2,000 of the tens of thousands of documents that were in that case.
And they hadn't consulted the Pentagon, I believe, for
No,
guidance.
but I have to tell you that I don't think the Pentagon is necessarily in a position to do consultation on illegal documents presented illegally.
Right.
The Pentagon is in a position to say these are illegal and they want them back.
Right.
What you have, though, is a situation of if you want to define it as what is the role of the whistleblower in the internet age.
Yeah.
I think WikiLeaks is the template for arrogance, self-righteousness, and naivete. And it's very interesting. Amnesty International gave WikiLeaks an award in 2008 for being the best new media in the UK. And a couple of months ago, joined 4 other human rights organizations in writing to WikiLeaks saying that you're putting the lives of people in danger.
Yeah.
As this whole issue evolves and emerges. And as there are no absolutes in so much of what we do, I would say there's a couple of absolutes. One is the documents they have been obtained illegally and are being used illegally. Second, I do not believe that they have the expertise to know how to eliminate information that could be of danger to our men and women in uniform and national security. And third, it is a glaring example of how technology has outpaced law and policy.
Yeah. Well, I noticed one thing that it did was, in a rare point of convergence, it brought the Washington Post and the Washington Times together and both criticizing them for doing this. So that doesn't happen very often. And I just wanted to make clear, I wasn't saying that Jeff was saying that it should be certainly bombed or even cyber disabled through cyberspace. I was saying that there are some people out there that have written that's what they interpreted from his remarks. So does anybody else want to talk about the WikiLeaks? I'm sure that...
I'd just like to repeat two words that Secretary Wilson mentioned, and that's anonymity and accountability. And a lot of things have failed to keep up with current events and with technology, but I wrote that down, and that's fundamental here.
Yeah. Elisabeth?
Just that the New York Times has been the recipient of the documents, but the Times has, as it's pointed out in its news pages, we have redacted names and identities and.
Right. Well, more, Kirk, do you want to?
It's not just people in uniform that are put in danger. It's the people in these countries that have been
Afghans on the ground.
Right, Afghans,
right.
Iraqis that have put themselves at risk to help because they believe it's the right thing.
Right.
And if you've been there and you've been in those situations, you've seen some of the horrible, horrible things that are done to people. It's inconceivable to me that someone would do this.
Has any of that proven to be true? I know that was the concern, especially in the Afghan documents, that people were going to be retaliated against. Has there been any evidence of that happening yet?
It is absolutely clear that our enemies in many places are basically going to school now on these documents.
Yeah.
And certainly efforts are being taken to protect the lives of people who may be at risk. So I would just leave it at that, but let us just say that anybody who has access to the internet now has access to these documents.
Right. Well, just because that is somewhat tantalizing, can you give any more clarification of that? What kind of efforts are being made? Are we moving people or putting them into witness protection programs or increasing security around them as a result of this?
I will resist the temptation to take you up on the tantalizing part, and just say that there are a lot of people who are paying a lot of attention to making sure that those who may be at risk are not so.
Right.